All right, let's bring in Adam Shapiro, Jolene Kent, Scott Shellady, and Shah Galani, who's back from the Hamptons. Shah, listen, back on October 14th, on this very program, you told Stuart Varney you expected to see 15,000 on the Dow long before you saw 18,000. We scoffed. Stuart said you were consistently wrong, and here we are at 15.8. We're there on the Dow. Where do we go from here? But I'm just giving you props and saying well done.
Thank you. Unfortunately, Ash, I think we're going lower. The markets today are obviously weak, and then depending on how we close, I think they could get weaker. There's nothing fundamentally strong anywhere globally to hold up markets. So all of the major markets are in a downtrend. And that includes commodities, includes currencies. So there's really no positives out there. And I think this has to just wash its way through multiple markets before we see any kind of capitulation, which I think we're a good ways off from. So it's dangerous out there.
Dangerous out there. Scott, let me bring you in. It seems like anytime we stop the bleeding or get a little bounce, that is very temporary and just a signal to go another leg lower. Are we in a bear market?
Yeah, it feels like it for sure, number one. And we got in extra early to kind of call around the world to see what really was the main reason for this sell-off. And it doesn't matter if you talk about oil or you talk about stocks. There really isn't a good fundamental reason for the sell-off except for one big thing. That mentality of buy the dip is out the window now. Last year, when you could count on the market to come back and rally, we had a lot of buyers when we sold off. But now they're gone, and they're not coming back anytime soon. And I agree with Shar. That's why the market feels heavy, and we sell the rallies now instead of buy the dips. That's the big change. It's a mental sell-off rather than just a fundamental.
Is that the difference, Scott, between a bull and a bear market? In a bull market, you can buy on the dip, but in the bear market, as we've seen, you do that, you're going to lose.
Yeah, that's one of the big differences. But another one is, we can't have all-time record highs in the stock market and not have our economy do better than 2.2 GDP. I mean, we have put people to work, but they're not making anything. So slowly but surely, the world's woken up to the fact that, yes, we've had a central bank that's gotten to these levels, but at the same time, we're not really making anything. Nothing's really better except for asset prices, and maybe something's got to give.
Yeah, we're seeing gold up $8. Joe, so much is made of China. Is this a China story, or is it just part of the puzzle?
Well, some of the analysts I've talked to this morning say it's priced in already, but there is a lot of uncertainty as to whether the central bank in China is actually going to inject more capital into the markets. They already did it on Monday morning, our time.
Yep.
So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But that GDP number, everyone knows it. Everyone also is skeptical of it. Maybe the growth is closer to 4.5% rather than 6.8 or 6.9.
Yeah. Is China a Ponzi scheme, Adam, which several of our guests have stated?
Yeah, Gordon Chang was on just the other day. Yes, China is a Ponzi scheme. But look at the real world of what's happening here. You have $200 billion pulled out of the stock market by pension. So there's a huge amount of money that's sitting on the sides. At some point, it will come back in. But with Disney trading at $92, so much for Star Wars. When you have Caterpillar hitting, we talked about Caterpillar on Monday. You want to see what's happening with the global economy, look at Caterpillar. Another 52-week low today, $57.99 within the last 5 minutes. And even IBM, you talked about that?
Yeah.
It hit a new 52-week low, $118.
IBM is the story to watch, I think, in terms of looking at how much it's dragging on the Dow right now. If you had earnings last night, and essentially what happened is you had a miss, revenue down 8.5%, and then EPS also down precipitously. Looking ahead, though, is the outlook that is really dragging the stock this morning. And the question of, yes, they're competing in cloud, but it doesn't necessarily make up for hardware, software, and all the other losses.
Let me bring in Shah very quickly. It's a good point. We're at a 5-year low on IBM. Is this more a story of IBM trying to change its strategy and its business model more than the economy?
Yes, it starts off as an IBM story. It ends up being the weight of the markets are falling on top of IBM. IBM stock, if you look at it from a graphic point of view, technically, looks like one of its motto should be, this is the stock, the company that fell out of bed and can't get up. It's never going to, it hasn't woken up to the realities of the new market and what it has to do. It's tried with cloud computing. It's made a lot of inroads, but it hasn't captured any meaningful market share, and I don't think it's had much higher to go.
You talk about the realities of the new market. The market was one, you had the inflated, easy money from the central banks, but you also had this belief that the BRICS, Brazil, Russia, could never go down. Look what happened with Russia with the drop in the oil price. Look what's happening to Brazil. The economy is in a shambles. And does that ever come back?
A lot of them will come back eventually. It's going to take some time because there's going to be capital flight, especially out of the emerging markets. This is another thing that's weighing on markets globally. We saw that in 1998. If China continues to fall, which I believe it will, emerging markets will crumble. We will see this contagion go around the world very quickly. And IBM is certainly going to be part of that. There's just nothing there holding it up, so it has a lot further to go on the downside.
Yeah, let me bring in Scott to talk about oil because, this obviously is a big story. The International Energy Agency said this, Scott, and I wrote this down. Unless something changes, the oil market could very well drown in oversupply. I mean, that's the bottom line here. So we could see low oil for quite some time.
You know what? You're exactly right. That's the big story. The plunge in oil prices is kind of a story. But the real story, just like in interest rates, is lower for longer. That's going to be the new story here. So I also think that a big culprit of this has been how the central banks around the world, in efforts to get themselves out of their own problems, have been cutting or devaluing their currency. That makes the dollar a lot stronger. So this is really, if you pull away everything, a dollar story affecting oil and then the supply on top of it. That's the big story.
Right, very quickly, I'm just going to give you